Hello, hello, Gutsy Women. Welcome to this beautiful Tuesday, and I hope life is treating you well and you're having a wonderful day, no matter what time it is in your world. Today, I have the honour and privilege of interviewing the very lovely Claire Gilchrist. And Claire lives in South Africa, and she's in Johannesburg, and she's got a story to tell you about who she is, where she is, and the story around what brought you, Claire, to doing what you do, that pivotal moment that made this your passion. Thank you.
Okay. So, Dee, would you like me to kick off? Is that the first question you'd like me to? Okay. Well, you know, sometimes I think chance, fate, your destiny, possibly your life purpose, and I do go for stuff like that, absolutely, has a huge hand in bringing you to where you need to be. I've always said, and I'll give you guys a bit of a background into, you know, the sort of life path I walk, because it's been quite an interesting one. Ending up here was the last thing I would have imagined when I was round about, let's say, 16. I acted at school. I was passionate about acting. Everything was academics and culture. I come from a very artsy family. My dad was a concert pianist and my mom a teacher, but he also became a teacher, and actually most of the family, as my mom would say in South Africanese, means just overflowing with teachers. And I was asked, I think, by my mom when I was about 16, saying, look, you know, don't you think that you should look at studying teaching because of it? And I looked at her and I said to her, me? Please, I'm a performer. And she quotes that back at me these days because I am not really the performer at all. I'm now the teacher. So I went and studied drama. I've got an honors degree in drama and English, and I had a very interesting career for 10 years in this country as an actress. I was very lucky. I had a lot of work. I had theatre and film and TV and voiceover, because to survive in the industry, you have to pretty much do it all. And I think it was a very good lesson looking back, because freelancing, which as actors you obviously do, taught me a lot about freelancing as a therapist, which you generally do as well. But in between acting and eventually becoming a therapist, I became an actor's agent. My own agent actually asked me to sit in for her. And I remember asking her at the time, going, why me? Because I knew nothing about that. And she said, no, because I trust you. So I said, okay, fine. And I really enjoyed it. But I said to her, please don't ever ask me to do this on a permanent basis. You know, I've got this and I've got that, and I'm a pianist myself. I've got my music and this and that and the other. And then it came to one fine day, and I was sitting in for her assistant, who I knew was leaving. And she looked at me that day and she said, you know, I would ask you, but I know you've got this and you've got that and you've got the other. And I said, yes, absolutely. And I drove home. And it was at one pivotal moment, I can still remember exactly where I was on the road in one of my little actor's cars. And I just went, oh my gosh, that's what I've got to do. And it was this absolute knowing. I actually went cold, and I have a very strong intuition. I mean, I work with it obviously in my therapy work, but that was the first time it really kicked in. Got home, spoke to a housemate, said, do you think? She said, I don't know. Phoned my mom, said, do you think? She said, I don't know, maybe. And I thought to myself, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to phone her. The clock is on 5 o'clock. She takes all those phones off at the agency at 5 o'clock. If she picks up, that's a sign. And she did. And I said to her, I've got to come and see you tomorrow. And I went in and saw her, and I said to her, I can't explain. I just know that this is the next step. So I worked for her for about 3 years. She'd kind of lost interest in the agency, in the process. So the accountant and I scraped together all the money we had, got bank loans, and we bought her out. And I owned and ran that agency, and I was elected chair of the Body of Agents South Africa. And that was the next 10 years of my life. And what then got me into what I'm doing, I'm giving you the slightly roundabout version, was a rather life-changing course. It's actually something developed in the UKD, in Scotland at Findhorn, called the Transformation Game, which is an extraordinary, extraordinary process. Playing it for 3 months like a course, all these healing abilities came up that I didn't really realize that I had. And I took the biggest jump of my life. I sold my shares in my agency and I left, and I just jumped into all of this. Not quite sure if it was the cleverest move or the most courageous move or the stupidest move, because it was pure trust and faith. And I've walked a lot of my life in pure trust and faith. So that was the beginning of my therapy career. I studied further. I kind of came in from the outside. I've got a bachelor's and a master's degree in metaphysical science. I too studied hypnotherapy, just a very little, because I've used a little bit of it with my clients. I have worked as a counselor, coach, trainer, speaker, and now I'm doing quite a lot of writing for the last 20 years, and it has been the most rewarding time of my life. I don't think I realized that this was a complete second leg, and the third leg has begun now. I closed my practice last year because nearing the end of, I suppose let's call it the counseling leg, and very intensive work with mental health people, especially bipolar, ADHD, etc. I did a lot of research, and I've been doing I was going to say a ton of innovation. It's a very South African expression, sorry. I've been doing a lot of innovation and have developed a brand new modality called frequency balance to tackle bipolar, ADHD, anxiety, depression, mood swings, focus issues, anger, panic, etc., from source. And, there's a very long story as to what I've actually developed, but that I've been running with, and it is now my privilege, I guess, to really get it out there. The research is finished. I know what I have, and it's now to get the buy-in to really help people deal with their mental health issues, and not just to take a pill or, go to a recovery center and find yourself going back in 6 times because nothing's really been dealt with. So that's really where I am now. To answer the question,
yes.
long and wide.
Thank you so much. And I found that absolutely fascinating, because do you know what? The intuition is something that guides our lives when we listen to it and takes us into the right direction. And quite often the intuition will come in, especially I'm talking about not only myself here, but I'm talking about lots of clients that I've had with chronic health conditions, and the type of work that I do around the mind and the body and the anxiety and the stress and the thoughts and beliefs and all of that, is that when we get the intuitive call to do something or to say something or to behave in certain ways, we ignore that through socialization, through fear or whatever. And that means our condition, our problems, our issues continue for far longer than they need to. So I'm fascinated by when you said you got this pivotal moment in the car, I have to do this, and you went with it. Can you help the ladies in the group with saying something about that would help them with whatever stresses and things that they're concerned about that are causing this in their own psyche or in their own physical life?
I'm going to answer it in a slightly, I was going to say an offbeat way, but I'm going to relate my journey to this because it's a very good question. I cannot say in all honesty that this has been at all easy. It hasn't. I have learned something very valuable, though, that I'd like to share through it. I can, because of, I suppose, going for things, and I have got the kind of makeup that allows me to take that risk, take that chance, and go for it. I don't have the kind of body that easily goes for it as easily, if you know what I mean. And the one thing I have learned is, so I'm just trying to think of the best way to put because I deal with a lot of mental health issues, but this pertains to the gut as well. I don't think I realized how much I had to learn to process my emotions as I took these steps, because I've done this kind of thing a couple of times in my life. And every time after I did it, I've gone, never again. You know, that kind of huge leap, because spiritually, I get it. And it is so easy for me to make that leap and just go in that trust and faith, because I know that everything will be okay. I don't have the kind of makeup that processes emotion naturally or easily. So I've had to teach myself that. And the more I haven't processed my emotions, the more my body has played up. And I too have had a lot of gut issues and very high acid as I've made these leaps because of the fear. Naturally, your body's going to feel the fear, where the mind, and I have a very strong mind, the mind has gone, whee, I've gone, there's the leap, done. The emotions are sitting there, and it's taken me a lot of years, and this is something I teach my clients hugely. Tap into your emotion to see what you are actually feeling about your life. I mean, I teach my clients to do an emotion journal where you sit at the end of a day and go into, what did I feel today? Just to get that emotional processing going, because sometimes it's the one thing that we miss, and then the body is sitting with this glut, and that's when it tends to play up hugely. So I do that myself. I sometimes have to remind myself when I've shifted something spiritually, what am I feeling? And I'll sometimes do a little tapping process, you know, a little EFT, a little bit, and I'll start on the forehead and go, okay, what are you feeling? Is there something you can do about it? Oh, okay. And this step is the most important one. Once you identify what you're feeling, fear, hurt, anger, disappointment, you know, feeling paralyzed, whatever you might be feeling, is to sit in it for about 15 seconds and really allow yourself to feel deeply and breathe it out. And I find then that the body starts processing, and then you find that all the issues start minimizing physically. So that's an indirect thing. I mean, that for me is so much of my work in terms of something like mental health, bipolar, etc., which is what I do, is teaching emotional processing. But in terms of my journey, boy, that's one thing I've really had to learn. And I still pull myself up for going, I know I'm feeling like this because I've leapt 5 steps ahead of where my emotions are, and they need to catch up, you know? So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Thank you. Yes. And it's all about the mind, the emotion, and the body. And when we align all of those things, then life is smoother, a lot smoother. And so I'd like to go on now to a question around the work that you do and the people that you support and help. So you work with bipolar, ADHD, and all that. Now, ADHD is one of the I've worked with bipolar for a long time in my offline life in my work, but ADHD seems to be a particular condition. I don't really want to call it a condition because there's so much in it, but ADHD is, those letters are brought up now so much within my arena and the world, you know. So I'm seeing so many people saying, I've just been diagnosed with ADHD, I've just been late diagnosis ADHD, blah blah blah. This explains a lot about my life and what, you know, how I behave. I'd love you to talk a little bit about that side of your work and how you can help maybe the women in the group who may have a diagnosis of ADHD or bipolar, who may have family members with that, and that may be contributing to their own physical stresses in their life.
Okay. In terms of what I've developed to treat these issues or ailments, should we say, I'm going to just give a tiny bit of background into what I discovered through researching my own clients, myself, family, friends, everybody. I started seeing, and this of course started in lockdown, that little time that we had all the silence and the space and the isolation, and, you know, depending on obviously on what your life entailed, but I'm a single person, so it entailed a lot of silence and space and isolation. I'd been doing a lot of coaching and training right up to the April that our first lockdown in South Africa started. So, I was out there with big groups and, because coaching's also been a large part of my life. And I've been a communication coach as well, which I really enjoyed. That comes from the acting days. But seeing my clients online and really just, again, this was kind of a destiny, something happening here, narrowing my clients down to quite severe counseling cases, and everyone coming to see me online was really for anxiety at the time. But I started noticing volumes of other symptoms and these behaviors. Some people had been diagnosed, some people hadn't. Some people had gone the psychology route and found it, too much talking, too long, etc., and were looking for other sort of therapies. So, I'm slightly more on the alternative side. But what I started noticing was when you have someone diagnosed with bipolar and or ADHD and or dyslexia and or anger issues, panic, depression, mood swings, and you see that you're starting to see this in every client you're seeing, but the diagnoses are all varying, and yet their behaviors were so remarkably similar. So when I sat and looked at case studies and eventually interviewed a lot of these guys with questionnaires and found the same answers coming out of people who weren't remotely related, different ages, different races, not culturally the same, not brought up the same, I started seeing these underlying patterns come out, and that's where I started realizing that anger, panic, anxiety, depression, focus issues, bipolar, body dysmorphia, ADHD are very much related. They're almost on a behavioral spectrum. And I started looking at identifying those behaviors and treating there. Because if you treat there, that's where the change can be made. So that's one side of frequency balance, my modality. And that very much requires a therapist to do that with you. I will be training therapists on that. It's the most fascinating work. It's just unbelievable. And you don't have to have bipolar to have the behavioral makeup. And I found that behavioral makeup in myself and had to do quite a lot of cleanup work there, in order to teach it. So very interesting stuff, and very much in my family where we do have bipolar, funnily enough. So there's all that going on. But on the other side, what I discovered, which I think would be very helpful for people in the group, is the physical connection to mental health. Never let anyone tell you that your body is divorced from your mind, as Dee will tell you, obviously, and she will work the other way, going, your mind is not divorced from your body. And I will say, you cannot divorce the whole system from mental health. It's called mental health for whatever reason that might be. Your issue is generally not just in the brain. I've always asked myself the question, if there is something in the brain, what is causing it? What is behind it? Take those steps back. And what I've found with my clients, in order to do the deeper work by changing behavioral patterning, which can go a long way to changing stuff, is to physically stabilize the body. So I ran a course February to April this year online, and I had therapists and sufferers in, which worked very nicely. And I taught what I call the tools: breathing, grounding, diet, processing emotions, all the physical stuff that goes, it can stabilize you by 50% in a week if you work a little bit of a program with that. And the first thing I always look at is diet. With everybody, and this comes from research, with everybody, bipolar, ADHD, and everyone on this kind of spectrum that I've unearthed or discovered in a way, you've got to eat for your blood sugar. And missing meals, intermittent fasting, not eating enough protein, eating sugar, drinking a lot of caffeine, not having breakfast, all that kind of stuff goes a long way to pushing highs, to plunging into lows. And as I said, if you get that aspect sorted, you can stabilize yourself 50% more within a week if you stick to it. And I've had a lot of people coming to me for that who've been in recovery centers, who've been, and sort of almost written off as not being able to recover. And yes, there's a lot of work to do to actually recover, but starting with this is the biggest, it's the best. And I too follow that. So if there's any advice I could give, it's that working physically to stabilize is where you start. And that will take you a long way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is where you actually work with your clients from the get-go, is looking at their diet and what is actually going on in there.
Yeah, I do. And I'm not physically running a practice now, but I'm teaching. So the course that I ran, I'm going to turn into an online course and sell that quite soon. And I will run again. I'm now just looking to see where I place my next steps, because I can reach more people running workshops and teaching online courses or physical courses without working necessarily one-on-one when it comes to these tools. It's my first port of call, because before you can look at the terrific distress sometimes that mental health issues place on us pressure-wise, stabilize the body first, and then you can look at all the work. I found in recovery centers, and I facilitated at one for a year, I had a lot of bipolar people there. I found that the work, it was quite interesting. There are quite a few in South Africa that a lot of people do come to from all over the world. And you had good therapists, you had good programs, there are a lot of yoga classes and meditation classes, which is great. But you'd find that breakfast consisted of cereals very high in white carbohydrates and sugary fruit flavored yogurts full of sugar, which for bipolar people and people even with ADHD is just a death sentence for your morning, because it's going to plunge your sugar levels down. So nobody had really looked at that. Therapists were really dealing with trauma, backed up trauma, which goes a long way to helping you, but never getting to the root of where your mental health issue comes from. And that's what I've set out to do. So I've got a big job in front of me.
Yes, you have, but I'm sure you're well equipped to do that, Claire, and I'm sure it's going to be an absolute success completely. Claire, I want to thank you so much for being here today and the amount of information and help and value that you've given in your interview today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been wonderful to chat to you too, and
yes.
which is lovely.
Yes, we've got a lot of things in common. I'm sure we will have a great connection moving forward. So thank you once again. I want to thank all the Gutsy women today for watching live or on replay. And I extend my offer to you to get in touch with Claire in the group via the comments and put questions in there as well. And I'm sure Claire will be able to help and assist you in any way possible. And she will be putting in her links as well to her work to help you to look a little bit deeper into what she does to see if you are a good fit with each other. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. And yes, Claire, last words.
Just one easy way to find me, obviously on Facebook is very easy. My name will be in the titles here. My legal name, because my dad was German, is, well, we say Rogeman. Look for Claire Rogeman. Look for frequency balance. I have a page on my system, and please do get in touch with me on either of those.
Wonderful. So I wish you all a wonderful day today, and whatever time of day it is, or evening, because these global situations that we've got, people are at all different times of the day and night. So thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll end it there, and we'll see Claire again, no doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you so much.